In this video, I'm going to show you how I run the ATRT. So the base ATRT costs 55 points. It has the armor keyword. It's also a climbing vehicle, which means that it's treated as a trooper for the purposes of vertical movement, and is an expert climber, which means it doesn't suffer damage for clambering. It has 6 hull, and then it has a resilience value of 4. It's speed 2. It doesn't have any defensive surges, but importantly it has a surge on attacking to a crit. And then base level, it has 2 weapons. It has a melee grappling claws, which are 3 red with impact 1, and then it has the A300 blaster rifle, which is range 1 to 3 and is 2 white dice. It also has the comm slot and a hardpoint slot. So generally the most important upgrade in terms of the ATRT is the hardpoint. Now for its hardpoint, it has 3 weapon options. It has the ATRT laser cannon, the ATRT Rotary Blaster, and the ATRT Flamethrower. So the ATRT laser cannon is the most expensive. It's 35 points. Its range 2 to 4 is a red and 2 black dice. It's impact 3 and it's a fixed front. The Rotary Blaster, on the other hand, is 30 points. It's kind of the middle of the road option. It's range 1 to 3, 5 black dice, and is again fixed front. Lastly, the ATRT Flamethrower is the cheapest at 25 points. It's blast, so it ignores cover. It again is fixed front. And it's spray, so you add this weapon's dice to the attack pool 1 time for each mini in the defending unit to which line of sight is not blocked. And its base dice pool is 2 black. So for example, if you had line of sight to a trooper squad of 5 troopers, you would roll 10 black dice. And that is range 1. So right now the laser cannon is probably the weakest of the 3 options. It has good range, being able to hit out to range 4, but it really suffers from the fact that it has a low dice pool. So with the 2 black and a red, its expected value without aim is 2.125 damage, and with an aim it's 2.75. So on average, without an aim you're going to be hitting 2, and with an aim you should be hitting 3 damage most of the time. Which sounds great with the impact 3 because it really makes you think you're going to be punching through the armor a lot. The problem is, however, that between cover or in the case of speeder bikes or the T47 airspeeder, their innate cover, you're often going to be losing a dice from the pool before you convert. So really, most of the time you're going to end up with 2 at best, or maybe even 1. And it just means that it really does suffer from this low dice pool because you're just not punching out as much damage as you would like. And it makes it really suffer against trooper units as well. It is, however, quite good in the mirror match, or at least slightly better, because it is actually, ironically enough, pretty decent at killing other ATRTs, who, with their terrible defensive dice of a white dice, with no surge, are not going to be rolling much in the way of blocks, and they're invariably not going to be having cover or are unlikely to take a dodge. But otherwise, there's just better options for what you can put on there. So right now the Rotary Blaster is definitely the most popular option for the ATRT, and it's really easy to see why, in that it's good against pretty much everything. It's range 1 to 3, so it has good range. It's got 5 black dice, which is really, really solid. And especially with the ATRT's native surge to crit. Pretty much the reason why you take this compared to everything else is while it might not be quite as good at the laser cannon as dealing with armor, and not quite as good as the flamer at dealing with troopers, it really has that quality of flexibility in that it can deal pretty damn good with both. And it's this flexibility and range that makes it a really valuable support for most rebel armies. You'll often see 2 of these, or in a really popular build at the moment, 3 of these backed up by lots of troopers in what's called the Rotary Club. Again, I think this is probably the best hardpoint for the ATRT at the moment, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree. Its main strength is that flexibility. The Flamer is probably the second most used option at the moment for the ATRT, and it's quite easy to understand why. It's the cheapest of the 3 hard points at 25 points, which means you can slap onto an ATRT and have a unit that costs 70 points and is absolutely lethal against infantry if it can get into close range. And it's probably that range that its main weakness. It's really hard. It can be really hard to get within range 1 of a unit. However, if the flamer is able to do that with its blast and spray, it can easily rack up a massive dice pool of 10 to 12 black dice, which offer 5 of 8 chance with the ATRT surge, are just going to absolutely ruin trooper units. It's not uncommon to see it just instantly vaporize a unit, though 3 to 4 models removed is more likely if it's on a full unit. It's also really good in this sense because it is so damaging, in that it becomes a really high value target despite its cheap cost. So you'll often see opponents throw a lot of firepower at it because they don't want it to get into range, which can allow your more valuable units or your objective scoring trooper units to get into position. Again, it's really good. However, a lot of the time, most people will still opt for the Rotary Blaster. So right now there's 2 options for the comm slot. There's the comms jammer, which costs 15 points and means that enemy units at range 1 cannot be issued orders unless they are issuing it to themselves. And there's the long range comm link for 10 points, which is during the command phase you can be issued orders as though you are in range of your nominated commander. Neither of these options are terribly popular at the moment, and I don't think that'll change for the foreseeable future. Long-range comlink really suffers from the fact that most of the time you want your ATRT fairly sort of central to your position to form a fire base to support your trooper units, and also suffers from the fact that there's popular options out there that are more generalist, such as Commanding Presence for Leia when that drops, or currently Battle Meditation for Luke, that cost the same amount of points, but are far more flexible in that they can be used for all units and not just the ATRT. Comms Jammer really does suffer from the fact that the main unit of ATRT or variant of ATRT that wants to use it is the Flamer, because obviously there's a natural synergy there in that the Flamer wants to get in range 1 for its weapon, and then Comms Jammer wants you to be in range 1 anyway. The issue is that at 15 points it is quite expensive, and really a lot of people when they're using the Flamer ATRT want it to be a throwaway sort of unit anyway. So slapping on an extra big points upgrade on it kind of defeats its purpose, because then obviously the more expensive it gets, the less throwaway it is. However, there is synergy there in that you can roll up to your target and then prevent it from being able to do anything about it through Comms Jammer. However, for the most part, I think steer clear of the comm slot for now. So I'm not going to cover how to use the ATRT laser cannon, as I don't think there's much value to it right now. Obviously that might change as more armor units are released that are more vulnerable to the laser cannon. However, I think in terms of the Rotary Blaster, which is really, really popular, one of the main and best ways to use it is in support of your key trooper units as they try and push up on objectives. The Rotary Blaster is really good at punishing other trooper units, as it doesn't care about impact, and with that 5 of 8 chance, it's doing 3 to 4 damage a roll, even against heavy cover that can still remove a model or 2, which is really, really good. So this is how you'll often see Rotary Blaster ATRTs used. They're sort of out there a bit, almost often in the open, just because they're hard to get cover on, and they're there to really help add some very, very valuable firepower to your objective grabbing units. The other advantage of this as well is the ATRT is, through its offensive capabilities, quite hard to ignore. So you'll often see your opponents dedicating firepower into the ATRTs that otherwise they would be putting into your far more vulnerable trooper units. This is really good because often this will mean that later on in the games, when your trooper units are very, very valuable, they'll still be alive as a result of the work the ATRTs have done. All kinds of ATRTs, with their really, really terrible defensive dice, do want to make use of cover as much as possible. However, with their height and size, generally you need a big piece of line of sight obstructing terrain to be able to maneuver them in close. But with the Flamer ATRT especially, who really, really rely on getting into that close range, it can be really important to grab one of these line of sight blocking pieces of terrain to help close the gap. And I think this is one of the best ways you can use them, is you can hide yourself behind the line of sight blocking terrain and then activate, move your distance 2, get within range 1, and happily flame away. Without this line of sight blocking terrain, the ATRT would be incredibly vulnerable not only to the HH-12 troopers, but also to the ATST. And you'll find that this is a common problem. So if you're running the Flamer ATRT, or often in any case the rotary one, try and position yourself behind line of sight blocking terrain as much as possible to help increase your survivability until the point where you want to jump in and attack. Another thing to keep in mind with the ATRTs of all varieties is that with your 3 red dice off the rending claws, you're actually really good in melee. You've got a 7 of 8 chance to hit, which means that the very vast majority of the time, you will be rolling 3 hits even without aim. And this just makes them really, really good in close combat. And it can be a good thing to do if someone's pressing up on you with trooper units or with hero units such as Vader and Luke. Obviously though, if you get into close combat with the Jedi, they will tear apart the ATRT very quickly. But in their death, they can really get some valuable damage put out there on such heroes. And against trooper units, they can absolutely annihilate them as they don't really have a means of getting through the armor. Something to keep in mind with the ATRT, if you are running one of its 3 hardpoint weapons, is the fixed front. It can be very hard for the ATRT to turn its gun around if it gets flanked, or especially if something gets in behind it, such as through rapid reinforcements. And this can be a very big problem, as if you're not on target, you're really not getting much value from them. So really think about as the enemy is closing with you, the way you've positioned your ATRT, and can it readjust effectively with a pivot action or with a move, or both, in 1 turn or less to really deal with any sort of flanking movements. If you're not doing that, or if you're letting yourself, say for example, it can be hard, but if you're getting hit by the T-47's harpoon gun and flipped around, you can really start to see some seriously diminishing value from the ATRT, as they really do rely on those hardpoint weapons a lot of the time. That's pretty much it for the ATRT. The things to keep in mind, like the things that they're good at, is their surge to crit, and especially in combination with their guns, the hardpoint options, or their rending claws. Plus their armor keyword is really good. But, with that white defensive dice with no defensive surge, if there's something hitting them with impact, such as DLTs or HH-12s or an ATST, they're going to fold very quickly. That 6 hull will evaporate extremely fast, and you have to keep that in mind. Overall, though, they're a fantastic support unit, especially if you've got the rotary option on them. Or they're a fantastic offensive weapon if you've got the flamer on them, as you can really threaten a lot of trooper units with it. So with those 2 sort of options in mind, use them to support your troopers as a firebase, or play aggressively with them and really force your opponent to make some difficult questions. This is really good because they're really cheap. You can get them for 75, 90 points, and it's just a very attractive option. So that's it, the ATRT. Use it, support your troopers, get them out there. They're fantastic.